Asylum. What happened, America?
It's time for U.S. World Report. Here's Tom Osborne.
These are the stories making headlines this week. 2 Russians resembling men Britain accuses of jetting to England to murder a former spy said that they were innocent tourists who had flown to London for fun and visited the city of Salisbury to see its cathedral. Britain says that it's clear the 2 men who appeared on Russian state-funded RT television were agents of Russia's GRU military intelligence who carried out the attack, and their interview an example of Russia's obfuscation and lies. Hurricane Florence, a dangerous Category 2 storm, could stall upon reaching the U.S. mainland and make a slight turn southward once it hits the Carolinas. The storm is expected to be a major flooding event, and authorities are warning about deadly storm surges and possible mudslides. The European Parliament voted on Wednesday to sanction Hungary for flouting EU rules on democracy, civil rights, and occupation in an unprecedented step that left Prime Minister Viktor Orban isolated from powerful allies. Hungary said it would seek legal ways to challenge the 448 to 197 vote it described as petty revenge. A week after his inauguration, President Trump issued an executive order temporarily banning travel from several Muslim-majority countries and holding all refugee admissions. Since then, through procedural changes made largely out of public view, the administration has reshaped the U.S. refugee program, slashing overall admissions and all but halting entry for some of the world's most persecuted people, including Syrians, Iraqis, Iranians, and Somalis. This year, with a record high 68.5 million forcibly displaced people worldwide, the United States is on track to take in about 22,000 refugees, a quarter of the number admitted in 2016, the last year of Barack Obama's presidency, and the fewest in 4 decades. Which brings us to our story of the week. Asylum. America, what happened? Here's Dr. David Canervo to give us the backstory. David?
Thank you, Tom. An asylum is a safe place where people seek refuge from a threatening situation. It may be a country, a city, or a building. Many colonists came to America in search of freedom from religious persecution in their home countries. They saw the American colonies as places where they could worship safely, away from the constraints in their homeland. The idea of the United States as being an asylum continued through the 1700s and 1800s, as people from around the world sought to come to America to escape hunger, poverty, and hopelessness in search of a safe new life. The plaque on the Statue of Liberty celebrates the openness of our borders to immigrants seeking a new life. U.S. immigration laws specifically allow people to come and stay in this country if they are fleeing a repressive environment that they believe threatens their lives. Some cities have sought to shield immigrants from the American legal system when they come to the United States without formal approval from the Immigration and Customs Service. City officials believe it is morally right to not inform U.S. officials of the existence or location of illegal immigrants living in that city, because they see the deportation of people seeking a better life, regardless of how they entered the country, as contrary to the message on the Statue of Liberty and our tradition as a nation. Stories exist in this country and in others of people who have sought safety within the confines of a church, where there is a belief by the church leader that someone may be sought unjustly by government officials. Asylum, the ability to stay in the church safely, is allowed while the church officials seek to resolve the problem. In addition to churches, foreign embassies have also been used to shield potential political prisoners from the local authorities. The question is whether the United States still serves as an asylum for the poor and huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Ken?
Thank you, David. Let's begin with this clip from the Schaus Law Group. How does someone apply for asylum in the United States today?
I'm Andres Ortiz, immigration attorney here with the Schaus Law Group, and a lot of people ask me, how do I apply for asylum here in the United States? One of the things that's very important to understand is that for a person who's been in the United States unlawfully for more than a year, in many circumstances the person does not qualify for asylum. However, they may qualify for asylum-related applications, such as withholding of removal or relief under the UN Convention Against Torture. Assuming that you are able to file within 1 year of entering the United States, there's 3 elements that you need to prove to be able to apply for asylum. The first is that you have a well-founded fear of returning to your home country. And this well-founded fear can be proven either because you suffered past persecution or that you have a fear of returning in the future because other people who are in similar situations are also suffering harms. And number 2, there needs to be a group that has persecuted you because you are in some kind of specialized group, or there is a group that would likely go and persecute you because you are in a specialized group. And these specialized groups are by no means exhaustive, but here are some examples. A person's race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, or political beliefs. And finally, number 3, the government needs to be the entity that it's persecuting you, or there needs to be a group that the government will not control in persecuting you. It's very important that if you are seeking asylum here in the United States, that you seek out an immigration attorney and not a notario or an immigration consultant. And this is because these people are not lawyers who often take advantage of people by filing fraudulent asylum claims, telling them that they're going to get an immigration benefit, but in the end, put them on a path towards deportation. So if you have a fear of returning to your home country, it's important to consult with an experienced immigration attorney who can help you navigate the tricky waters of immigration law.
Dr. Canervo, these rules of today, they don't really apply to, say, some of the asylum seekers from World War II and the beginning of our space program. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Following the end of World War II, there were a number of people, of course, who chose to want to come to the United States instead of the Soviet Union because of the reputation of the two governments. And so one of the things that we did was to ignore the fact that people such as Wernher von Braun, who was the chief German scientist in charge of their missile program, we decided that we needed to capture him and take him to the United States, even though he was involved in sending missiles to England and killing lots of people. So when it came to looking at what people had done in their past, we were willing to overlook their work in the German army to capture him for our own later benefit. Ken?
Tom Osborne, do we look the other way now to anybody?
Well, sadly, that's the case. Thousands of immigrants from Central America have been asking for asylum in the U.S. based on rampant gang violence or domestic abuse in their countries. 2 new actions by the Trump administration in recent weeks mean that few of them are likely to win their arguments. Asylum for abused women and those fleeing gang violence has all but ended in the U.S., regardless if a case has been pending for years or is a fresh plea at the border. The changes in policy were unexpected and unilateral and have thrown asylum cases, for example, in California and across the country, into turmoil. For example, in June, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions made the unusual move of intervening in a domestic violence case in which a North Carolina immigration judge denied the application of a Salvadoran woman. She said she'd been sexually abused, emotionally, and physically abused by her ex-husband. A subsequent appeals board ruled in favor of Sessions, stepped in and overruled the appellate decision, restoring the lower court's ruling's denial. Immigration courts are not part of the regular judicial system and are entirely under the power of the U.S. Department of Justice, giving our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, complete control over them. In his decision, Sessions argued that domestic abuse was a, quote, private violence, close quote, and that because Central American societies likely don't view married, abused women who are unable to leave their abusers as a distinct group in society, the United States should not either. So what we have then is, under current asylum laws, a petitioner must prove that they are a particular social group that is in trouble, unless the bid for asylum isn't based on race, religion, nationality, or political grounds. The final point, the asylum statute does not provide redress for all misfortune. This, Sessions wrote in his decision, the mere fact that a country may have problems effectively policing certain crimes such as domestic violence or gang violence, or that certain populations are more likely to be victims of crime, cannot establish itself as an asylum claim. And this past week, the Trump administration took a further step when U.S. citizens and Immigration Services began instructing its officers to reject new asylum seekers who made gangs or domestic violence the basis of their pleas.
Well, Tom, questions for asylum seekers. They ask, am I a refugee? Now, a refugee is someone who's been forced to flee his or her country because he or she has suffered harm and has a well-founded fear of future harm because of who they are. Mary?
You're listening to U.S. World Report with Tom Osborne, Dr. David Canervo, Ken McCaleb, and Mary Saliba. And we'll be back right after these messages, so stay with us. Welcome back to U.S. World Report with Ken McCaleb, Dr. David Canervo, Tom Osborne, and Mary Saliba. Ken?
Thank you, Mary. This next clip is from Vox Video, that's spelled V-O-X, and it's part 1 of 2, and it's titled, Why Seeking Asylum is So Difficult.
Outrage outside a detention center in New Jersey today.
The disturbing images of small children being torn from their parents were troubling enough.
The Trump administration is reportedly weighing their options of housing immigrant children at military bases.
How did the United States get here? In the last 15 years, America has taken in more refugees than anywhere else in the world. A fraction of those refugees, asylum seekers, have grown in recent years to the point of overwhelming the current system. And now, the country is at a tipping point. The legal definition of a refugee is someone who isn't able to live safely in their home country, or has a really strong reason to fear that they won't be safe if they stay. Persecution that is racial, religious, political, or national, or targeting what's called a particular social group.
Someone who's been persecuted can apply for refugee status in their home country or in the first country that they flee to, where they might apply in a refugee camp, for example.
An asylee is a refugee. It's just that they've already arrived at another country, like the United States, and fear going home. Here's how it works. Asylum seekers must fill out the I-589 application, a 12-page form. If that sounds complicated for someone fleeing an oppressive homeland, don't worry. There's a 14-page instruction booklet to help. Both the form and the instructions are only available in English. And the I-589 has to be filled out in English, or it'll get sent back.
Not every asylum seeker necessarily understands the process or has the resources to kind of go about it exactly the right way. Customs and Border Protection itself has been accepting very few people in recent weeks who are presenting themselves for asylum. So people are waiting to be allowed to set foot in the U.S. and claim asylum for, 2 weeks on bridges in Ciudad Juarez in the heat of summer. At a certain point, it starts to seem like the safer option to go in between ports of entry and risk breaking the law.
If someone enters the United States without papers, they can't even file an asylum application until they convince the government in person that they're in danger at home. This is called credible